The phone rang at 7:42 p.m. on a Thursday. No greeting, no small talk, just my father's voice, clipped and precise like a boardroom memo. "Stay away from the family reunion. We're through with you." That was it. 17 words, 17 syllables, counting the pause before he hung up. I replayed it, not because I questioned it, but because I expected a sharper sting. A flare of rage, a twist in my stomach, anything. Instead, I felt still, as if the part of me that had quietly braced for this had finally heard what it always knew was coming. My name is Harper Lane. I'm the younger of two siblings. My father, Warren, built Lane Auto Services from scratch, starting as a mechanic, then a franchise owner, then a regional chain tycoon. My older brother, Rhett, was the heir he always envisioned. Charming, reckless, untouchable, and me? I was the one who kept the machine humming, silently, perfectly, unnoticed. I didn't call back that night. I didn't demand answers. I didn't even play the voicemail for my mother, Lynette, who always steered clear of business disputes when they turned ugly. I just texted him 2 words, "Understood." Then I opened my laptop, pulled up the loan portal I hadn't checked in months, and did something they'd never see coming. I removed my name, not out of fury, not for revenge, but for clarity. 2 years earlier, when the family business needed a $2.5 million loan to grow, the bank demanded a cosigner with impeccable credit. Rhett had debts. Warren had obligations. I had perfect finances and a Harvard MBA. They didn't beg for my signature. They just slid the papers across the table, expecting I'd sign. And I did. Because back then, I thought loyalty bought you a seat at the table. But now, alone at my kitchen counter, the voicemail faintly echoing, I saw something else entirely. They hadn't disowned me. They'd just formalized what they'd been doing quietly for years, and this time I was ready to finish their narrative. I used to believe my father prized order above all. But over time, I realized it wasn't order, it was control. Warren Lane built Lane Auto Services the way he built our family. Piece by piece, rule by rule, with no room for weakness. The garage always came first. The family was second, sometimes third. He had a saying he loved to repeat in front of employees and even more in front of us. "We don't hire outsiders. We raise leaders." That's what Rhett and I were, potential successors, at least in theory. Rhett, 3 years older, louder, brasher, always just beyond the reach of consequences. But he had the charisma Warren admired, a confidence my father saw in himself. So Rhett got the praise, the do-overs, the freedom. I got the to-do list. By 12, I was logging tire shipments in spreadsheets. By 16, I was managing payroll for the 3rd shop during spring break. I didn't choose it. I was assigned. No thanks, no questions, just the unspoken expectation I'd be wherever the business needed me, present, obedient, tireless. My mother, Lynette, wasn't cruel. She just faded into her role, hosting dinners, folding invoices into envelopes, smiling through meetings, then pulling me aside to say, "Your father's building something for us. Be grateful, sweetheart." So I was, or I tried to be. I worked hard, earned my MBA, turned down a corporate logistics job in Chicago because Warren said family outranked ambition. He needed someone to oversee the regional expansion. Rhett was apparently focused on big visions. I handled everything else. When the opportunity came to secure funding for a new headquarters, I negotiated the lease, compared rates from 6 lenders, and locked in a deal with strong terms and a 3-year fixed rate. But the bank required a second signer. Rhett's credit was a wreck. Warren didn't want to risk personal assets, so they turned to me. No ceremony, no discussion, just the paperwork on the table and a pen already uncapped. I hesitated maybe for a second. Then I signed. Because deep down, I still believed that proving my loyalty, my indispensability, would make them see me not as a backup, but as part of the dream. They never said thank you. They just assumed it was my obligation. That was 2 years ago. I thought I was investing in a shared legacy. I didn't realize I was just making myself useful enough to disappear. If you stay quiet long enough, you start to mistake invisibility for affection. It's not. It's just silence dressed up as peace. The first crack didn't feel like breaking. It felt like laughter, Rhett's laughter specifically. We were in a quarterly budget meeting, just the 3 of us, me, Rhett, and Warren. I'd spotted a vendor invoice, $12,000 repeated over 3 months. An obvious error, or so I thought. "That's from a pal of mine," Rhett said, waving it off like it was trivial. "Drop it. He cuts us deals elsewhere." I looked at my father, expecting something, a raised brow, a single word of scrutiny, but Warren didn't flinch. He just grabbed his coffee and said, "Focus on the big stuff, Harper. Stop acting like you don't belong." Don't belong. That phrase didn't just sting, it burrowed deep. I wasn't some rookie hire. I'd managed logistics for 4 site expansions, renegotiated our fleet lease at half the cost, and kept payroll steady through 2 supply chain messes. Yet when I questioned anything beyond spreadsheets or silent compliance, I became a stranger. After that meeting, things shifted, subtly at first. My access to internal systems started shrinking. I couldn't log into vendor accounts. The financial dashboard became view-only. The company credit card in my name expired. It was never replaced. Every time I asked, I got vague answers. We're restructuring, or it's a temporary issue, or worst of all, don't worry about it. Meanwhile, Rhett had a new standing desk, a company-funded trip to Vegas called a strategy summit, and an office chair worth more than my first car. Something stirred in me, not anger, not yet, but a quiet alertness, the kind that whispers, they're building a wall and it only opens one way. I started saving everything. Internal expense logs, meeting notes, emails where Rhett used my name to sign off with clients. At night, I organized them in a private folder on my personal laptop, labeled Quiet Evidence. I wasn't sure what I was building, only that I needed to hold onto the facts while they were still mine. One evening, I reached out to Danielle Keller, a law school friend I'd reconnected with after she helped her sister navigate a messy business split. I didn't share everything, just enough to ask one question. If a cosigner backs out of a business loan, what happens? Her pause said it all. Depends. If you're not a guarantor and haven't been linked to recent mismanagement, the loan can be reevaluated without you. Quietly. Legally, I let out a breath. At that moment, I didn't know if I was planning an exit or building a shield. What I did know was that the story I'd been living, the dutiful daughter preserving the legacy, wasn't mine anymore. They weren't just pushing me out. They were doing it slowly enough to keep profiting from my silence. It was a Thursday morning in early spring when the final piece clicked. The trees outside my office were just starting to bud. I remember that detail because something about new life made what I found feel even more stale. I just received my monthly credit report, something I checked out of habit more than worry. But this time, a line jumped out. Lane Holdings, payment deferral under review. I hadn't seen that name in years. It was a shell company Warren had set up for real estate, long inactive, or so I thought. Curious, I dug deeper. What I found wasn't surprising. It was worse. The expansion loan I'd co-signed 2 years ago, the one for Lane Auto Services' new regional headquarters, was behind, 3 payments late. The business was barely surviving, limping on grace periods and overdue vendor bills. My name was still on the loan. Worse, it was being used in emails to creditors as a reason to extend leniency. Because my credit was spotless. Because my finances were clean. Because I was, as always, the reliable one. But I hadn't seen a financial statement in months. I hadn't been invited to a board meeting since last fall. The last time I asked Rhett for an update, he sent a smirking emoji and, "Relax, sis. Big things coming." Things didn't pay debts. I pulled up old records, traced invoices back 6 quarters, cross-checked spending against budgets I'd written myself. Then I saw it. Over $40,000 in consulting fees funneled to a friend of Rhett's. Entries labeled market analysis with no campaigns attached. Fleet repairs billed 3 times over. Vendor quotes signed with my initials, ones I never approved. It wasn't carelessness. It was intentional. That same day, I met Danielle again, this time in person. We sat in a quiet corner of a coffee shop she liked near the courthouse. I showed her everything. She reviewed the documents slowly, her face calm. When she reached the co-signed loan agreement, she stopped. "You're not a guarantor," she said. I blinked. "Meaning what?" "Meaning they used your name to secure it, but you're not legally bound if you withdraw before a restructure." I exhaled. Danielle set the papers down, leaned forward, and said something I'll never forget. "You don't need to confront them, don't warn, don't yell. Just pull the ground out from under their wall and let it fall." I went home that night and opened the folder I'd renamed. No longer quiet evidence, now exit plan. Inside were PDFs, flagged emails, account screenshots, and a draft letter Danielle had helped me prepare weeks earlier back when I was still hesitant. I wasn't hesitant anymore. They hadn't just sidelined me. They'd used me until they thought I had nothing left to give. And maybe I didn't. But I had one thing left to take back, my name. It took 4 minutes. That's how long the portal stayed open after I logged in with the admin credentials I'd set up 2 years ago, back when I still had full access, back when I thought I was building something enduring. The screen flashed once, then showed a notice. Co-applicant status active. Modification options available. I clicked withdraw. Then I uploaded the signed letter Danielle and I had finalized weeks before. I entered my PIN. Submitted. No alarms sounded. No confirmation emails. Just a small message in gray text at the bottom, update received, processing pending review. It was done. The next step was protection. I emailed the bank's loan officer, Keith Horner, a man I'd worked with during the expansion. I attached a summary of financial irregularities, vendor fraud, forged signatures, and restricted access showing I'd been excluded. I was precise, professional, clear. What I didn't include was emotion. Within an hour, the bank froze the operating account tied to Lane Holdings and launched a loan review. Quietly. No call to my father, no note to Rhett, just a pause, a blinking cursor in their system where trust used to be. While they scrambled, I acted. I contacted my personal accountant, Sabrina Kim, a friend from grad school I trusted. We reviewed my risks, ran worst-case scenarios. She confirmed what Danielle had said. No liability, no credit damage, no legal duty to notify them. The trust I'd moved my savings into last month was secure. That night, for the first time in years, I left my phone on silent and meant it. I slept. When I woke, there were 32 missed calls. By afternoon, there were 78. 13 from my father, 7 from Rhett, 1 from a number I didn't recognize until I played the voicemail. It was Gordon Maddox, their longtime accountant. His voice was high-pitched, panicked, almost cracking. "Harper, call me now. This is urgent. The loan's collapsing. The bank pulled support. We're at risk of default. You need to fix this. Do you hear me? You have to fix this." I listened twice. Not because I didn't get it, but because it felt like justice. And justice, when it finally arrives, doesn't shout. It echoes. By evening, Rhett texted. "What the hell did you do?" Then another. "You're making this bigger than it needs to be. We could have handled this internally." But we didn't fit anymore. There hadn't been a we in years. Later that night, my mother left a voicemail, not angry, but soft, unsteady. "Sweetheart, what's happening? Your father says the bank froze everything that they might call the loan. Did you sign something?" I didn't explain. I called her back, let it ring twice. "I removed my name, that's all," her breath caught. "But you can't just do that." "Actually, I can," I said, "and I did." She paused. "Harper, this affects all of us." "No," I said calmly. "You made sure it didn't." Then I hung up, not in anger, but in finality. They chose the restaurant we used for birthdays, Leona's, with its old brick walls, too many ceiling fans, and the private room by the fireplace where we'd blown out candles and toasted with ginger ale. But there were no balloons this time, no cake. Just my parents, Warren and Lynette, sitting stiff at one end of the table and Rhett staring at his phone, acting like this was beneath him. An empty chair waited for me as if they still thought I'd come running. I arrived 15 minutes late on purpose. I wore gray slacks and a crisp blouse, neutral, unreadable. Danielle once told me power doesn't shout. It arrives without apology. Rhett stood as I walked in. "Nice of you to show up." "I didn't come for you," I said, sitting slowly. "Let's make this quick." Warren leaned forward, eyes fixed on mine. "You've made your point loud and clear." "No," I said, voice steady. "The bank made my point. I just stopped covering for your lies." His jaw tightened. Lynette shifted uncomfortably. "We're trying to hold this together," he said. "You think you're hurting us, Harper? You're hurting the legacy your grandfather built." I met his gaze. "Grandpa built a shop. You turned it into a dictatorship," Rhett scoffed. "Oh, come on. We gave you everything." "You gave me a job," I said, holding his stare. "Not a voice." The silence that followed was thick, almost solid, like a room that had finally stopped pretending. Then Lynette spoke, barely above a whisper. "What do you want, Harper?" That was the question, wasn't it? Not revenge, I'd already taken that. What I wanted was truth. I reached into my bag and placed a sealed envelope on the table. "This is a signed affidavit confirming I've withdrawn from the loan, the board, and all business operations. You will never use my name again." Warren opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. "I'm not done." I took a breath. "I'm also filing an anonymous tip with the state auditor. Missing funds, unpaid vendors, payroll irregularities." I slid the envelope forward. "It's your problem now, fully legally." Rhett's face reddened. "You're destroying us over ego." "I'm not destroying anything," I said, standing. "I'm just removing the illusion I was ever part of it." I turned to leave. Behind me, for the first time in my life, my father said the one word I never expected. "Harper, please." I paused, not from doubt, but from satisfaction. "You left a voicemail saying we were done," I said without turning. "I'm just agreeing with you officially." And then I walked out. The story hit the papers. Not the big ones, just a brief article in a local business journal. Lane Auto Services faces financial trouble amid internal disputes. I didn't leak it, but I knew who did. Danielle called me 2 days later, her voice half serious, half amused. When people lose control, they look for someone to blame. They just didn't expect that person to already be gone. After that, the voicemails turned bitter. From my father, "You ungrateful kid. We built that business for you. You're ruining your future." From Rhett, "You think you're clever, but you'll need us one day." From Gordon Maddox, the accountant, "Do you even understand what this means? You've destroyed their legacy." But here's the truth no one said aloud. They destroyed it long before I walked away. They destroyed it when they used my name but denied me a place. When they saw me as a threat, not a daughter. When they made me invisible. Now the loan was collapsing. The accounts were locked. Vendor contracts were unraveling. And me? I was untouched. No legal fallout, no financial hit. My credit secure, my savings safe. I forwarded the last voicemail to Danielle, then deleted the rest. I took my phone off silent, and for the first time in years it stayed quiet. No crises, no demands, no fires only I could put out. I moved into a small loft in downtown Portland. Nothing fancy, just sunlight, clean windows, and space for a desk and calm. I started consulting, quietly, helping small women-led startups avoid the traps I'd faced. Not because I needed a mission, but because I'd already found one. 3 months later, an envelope arrived at my new address. No sender's name, just the bank's logo and a tracking code. Inside was a single page. This letter confirms that the commercial loan associated with Harper Lane has been formally withdrawn and restructured. No further obligation remains. No action required. No thank you. No apology. No spin. Just a line drawn in ink in law and finally in truth. I filed the letter in a folder labeled closed and tucked it into the back of a drawer. That night I lit a candle by the window. The loft was still. The city below hummed, alive and unaware. I thought of that voicemail one last time. "Stay away from the reunion. We're through with you." They wanted silence, compliance, absence, and they got all three. What they didn't expect was that I'd thrive in that silence, that I'd build something not out of spite but out of reality. I poured a glass of wine, opened a new client file, and wrote one line at the top. "You're not difficult. You're just finally visible," and then I kept going.